Hello, my J Nation. It has been officially a year since Scott Pilgrim Takes Off came out. It came out literally a year ago, yesterday, as of recording this. And I originally wanted to make this video to be like a silly little video about like how Ramona's not the bad guy, because you know what? The amount of times I've seen people like vilify Ramona was a little bit too much, but give Scott would leave Scott scot-free. No pun intended, but they will just blame everything on Ramona, but, give little, disagreement with the 7 evil exes or Scott. But we're not going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about, how Scott Pilgrim Takes Off has changed a lot, and a lot of, the whole, controversy that came with it, because I thought it's interesting, to talk about it, and I really just want to also see it from, a year later after it got released. And there's a lot of controversy going around this show after it got released because of it wasn't very lore accurate. And spoiler alert, Scott Pilgrim literally takes off, literally does what's in the title. He literally takes off, bro's gone, bro went bye-bye, bro went to get the milk, literally on his girlfriend, friends with benefits technically, or situationship, whatever, but he literally takes off, and we focus more on Ramona and the 7 evil exes, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm actually as someone who was a fan before this show came out, I'm actually really am happy that they actually talked more about Ramona and her 7 evil exes, because I feel in the movie, they didn't really flesh that out, and I feel in the comics too, that they didn't really flesh them out, and they kind of just made, the 7 evil exes is just obstacles to get rid of. And yeah, I understand that was the plot in the original movie and the original comics, but I know that the 7 evil exes were just, plot devices to, move the story around, but I'm really glad that they finally, fleshed the characters out and, fully, did something with them, instead of just make them be hey, you know what, defeat me again. Because when it got announced that, it was going to have, Scott Pilgrim's gonna have its own, anime, I thought it was just gonna be, an anime retelling of what happened in the comics and what happened in the movie. I thought it was gonna be, the same formula, and I'm really glad that it didn't stick with that formula and decided to do something new. I do like this whole alternative universes thing, and I really do enjoy it. And the people who are older fans who didn't enjoy it, I feel you're just letting nostalgia, have a chokehold of you, and I feel you're just refusing to, look outside of it, because, y'all, I love how they flesh out the 7 evil exes, and I love how they, instead of, making it be hey, defeat me, that's all I am, they make it so, Ramona and them can, move on and become, something more than just enemies, just as my ex, and, that redemption arc they get, and I really do appreciate it, and it feels more fleshed out, the characters that don't have that much personality in the movie and in the comics really have a lot more personality. I feel I think his name, Lucas Lee, I feel Lucas Lee in the movie, who was just this bratty, oh, I'm so good, ex, take me back, Ramona, all of that. But in the anime, they show this whole other side of him. They show the silliness, they show the relationships between the 7 evil exes. We don't really see the relationship between the 7 evil exes in the comics, really, or in the movie. It's just kind of a whole, it's basically kind of when you're defeating a video game, and it goes one bad guy, and then the final boss, aka Gideon Graves, and you don't really show a lot of their relationship. It's just oh, well, we're the obstacle, and then the guy behind me is the obstacle behind me. But you also can really see the relationship between Lucas Lee and Gideon Graves, also Gordon Goose, and I'm really glad that we flesh out not just the personalities, but the relationships with each other, because the only 7 evil exes that we've seen have an actual relationship is the twins, and that's really it. And their relationship is just them being twins, not them being friends. You think the 7 evil exes would, be friends because they all hate Ramona and Scott, or maybe they would possibly hate each other too because they want Ramona, but they can't have Ramona, you know? Speaking about relationships, I'm also really glad we can see the 7 evil exes have a relationship outside of Ramona and Scott and the other 7 evil exes with other characters like Wallace, for example. Like, Wallace and Todd was the cherry on the pie for me. Like, maybe it's because, like, I low-key ship them, but this is, like, really great, and I love how they did with it in the story, and it just, like, really incorporates it. And it's like, you know, why does Todd have to worry about Ramona or Envy when he can just worry about, you know, his whole on-set fling with Wallace? Like, that whole thing was, I really liked it. I did. I feel like that was the cherry on the cake for this show, and I really did enjoy it. I don't know who didn't enjoy it. Like, I remember, like, after, like, the whole, like, kiss scene, like, everybody, like, started freaking out about it in the fandom, so, yeah. And this doesn't just also go with, like, Wallace and Todd. This also goes with, like, Gideon Graves and Julie Powers, and I feel like that was a really great addition too, aside of, like, you know, the relationships that the 7 evil exes have outside of Ramona, and I really do enjoy it, even though I still hate Gideon because he's still an abusive asshole. I mean, he was in the comics, he was in the movie, he sort of is in the, you know, in the anime. Like, at least he's not obsessed over Ramona, but, like, Ramona said, like, treat Julie better than you treated me, so I feel like he was toxic to her in the past. I don't know, that's what I headcanon. Also, I'm gonna be so for real about this. I don't like how y'all blame Ramona for the falling of her and Gideon, because the thing is, Gideon literally was emotionally abusive to her. Like, this is shown in the comics and in the, you know, the movie. Like, y'all blaming Ramona for quote-unquote, like, screwed up the relationship with Gideon, and y'all would, like, glaze Gideon so hard. Y'all need to shut up. I'm gonna be so real about that. That's my TED Talk about that. That's my rant about that, because y'all are so annoying about him. Do I like him more in the anime? Yes, I do believe he's still an asshole, but I don't like how y'all glaze him, because he's a jerk. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, another thing I'm glad that the show addressed that it didn't address in the movie and it didn't address in the comics was the unhealthy relationship between Knives Chow and Scott Pilgrim. And I'm really glad that they said, like, hey, Knives is not going to pursue Scott that way. Well, not anymore, at least. And she's not going to go through the whole, like, creepy stalker thing. And Scott isn't going to take advantage of her, and we're going to say, hey, maybe a 17-year-old and a 25-year-old isn't a good pair, and we should address that it isn't a good pair, it never will be, and it was terrible of Scott to do so. Which, like, if you've read the comics, obviously, like, we all know that Scott is in the wrong for, you know, dating a high schooler and then cheating on her with Ramona. Yes, that was terrible of him, but I'm glad that the show outright says, like, hey, Scott was a jerk for that, and hey, Scott apologizes for being a jerk. And I really am glad, like, we have more about the relationship between Knives and the other characters, like, for example, Steven, and we focus more about her as a musician and her as, like, a member of the band, and her friendship with Steven. I really do like that. And by the way, I'm not angry at her for having her whole obsession with Scott in, like, the comic and in the movie, because honestly, it's understandable. She's 17, she's not really emotionally mature, and when you're that dependent on, like, a man way older than you, you're gonna react like that. I'm not, like, victim blaming her or whatever. Like, I generally understand where she comes from in the comic and in the movie, but it kind of just, like, throws me off, and it kind of gives me the ick in a way, because it's just, like, they make, you know, Knives, they, like, dumb Knives down to just a creepy, you know, 17-year-old who got cheated on by Scott, and they kind of just, like, leave her on that instead of, like, building on her character like they do it in the anime. And I'm glad that they build on, like, her character in the anime, and I'm really glad they do, you know. And yes, like, I understand why, like, Knives does the things she does, especially with her obsession around, you know, Scott, and how, like, emotionally dependent she was on Scott in the movie. But the movie didn't really handle her very well. Like, they just kind of, like, what's the word? they kind of painted her in a really bad light, and it kind of just gave me the ick, if you know what I mean. Like, they just painted her, like, they just dumped her down to just the 17-year-old that Scott cheated on, who was very obsessed with him. Like, I didn't like how they painted her in that, but I feel like in the anime, they make her more emotionally mature and more like understandable and more like independent. Like, she's not dependent on Scott. Like, this is like true good like character change. Like, before anyone like complains like, oh, like they made total different character changes from the anime, from like the comics and the movie. You know what, the change in character with Knives was a good idea. It was a good idea. Sometimes changing a character's personality or character isn't always bad. Like, them changing, Knives into a better character and a more mature character and a way more likable character was a good idea and was good for the story. And I'm gonna be honest, I feel like the anime was really good. And this is coming from someone who loves the comics, who loves the movie and all of that. But trust me, I do believe that the anime is a little bit more superior than the movie. I do love the movie, don't get me wrong, but I love the anime more. And I love the comics too, but I love the anime more. And this is coming from someone who has been a fan of Scott Pilgrim way before the anime ever came out. So it's not like a newbie is saying this or whatever. And even if I was, like, who cares, bro? It's my opinion. Anyway, so that's it for this little ramble video. Tell me how you think of like the whole Scott Pilgrim series. Do you like the comics better? Do you like the movie better? Do you dislike them? Or do you like the movie more? Like, not the movie more. Do you like the anime more like I do? Yeah, this is just a little ramble video about how much I like appreciate this media, and maybe you can too after hearing me ramble, even though I gave you a spoiler warning. Anyway, this is going to be the end of this video. Here's all my socials. Go on my Tumblr if you want to see this comic that I just, made a little speed paint of and you just watched. There's my Tumblr. You can also ask me about the whole art process or whatever, and you can also ask my Oskies, go bananas. Anyway, goodbye.